Hi and welcome to Jessie James Beads. My name is Jem and today we're working with the Magical Mystery Bead Box. I'm looking at Welcome to the Bayou, which is the July 2023 box, and we're going to make a pair of earrings together today. You can make them a little bit shorter on that drop if you like. Why don't we head down to the board and have a very quick look at what you would receive if you were looking to get the Welcome to the Bayou July 2023 bead box. Well, there's so much, it won't all fit on the screen. How impressive is that? You don't just get one lot of chain, you get two lots of chain. Beautiful tones to go with the primary colour that you're seeing repeated throughout this gorgeous curated box, which is green. Look at those beautiful beads. We're going to be using some items from the Bayou bead mix today. We're also going to be using one of the connectors from the Emerald Moss Connectors Kit. We've also got diamond back leather cord. Look at how exotic that is. We've got Cypress Grove, which has got these impressive leaf charms or pendant drops in them, as well as some genuine gemstones and lava beads. Beautiful natural colours there. You've got a single oversized alligator which you can turn using the pin on the back into a pendant. It's absolutely stunning. You've also got a really gorgeous toggle clasp in there. We have got the painted turtle pair. They are stunning. One of my favourite turtles that I've seen in the charm form. You've got tassels galore in this part, which is the Cajun tassel assortment. And you have got this standout beauty with mixed media called Grass Snake. This one won't give you a scare. This is the bead box that we're working with today, which is Welcome to the Bayou, July 2023. I don't know about you, but I can definitely hear Creedence Clearwater in the background right now. Let's take a closer look at the earring that we're going to work on. So I'm kind of using the connector that we have in this beautiful emerald tone as a drop. But we're going to add some interest over the surface. We're also going to be using a short segment of that chain. Let's just tip all the bits and bobs out for the moment. Got a spare wooden piece because I wanted to show you what that would look like if you used one of the wooden beads. These are stunning. I adore working with wood. So I'm just going to leave those up there. You could use that instead of your emerald green connector. So let's have a gander. I just hastily knocked up some earring findings, so I'll just leave that up at the top. This was from one of the beautiful bead boxes. I've got a selection of jump rings, which I'm just going to scooch over to the side for now. And I've got that length of chain as well. The primary technique that we're going to learn today is adding wire over the surface of either a connector or that lovely wooden bead. So if we're going to add wire onto the connector, we're going to be using 20 gauge wire. And I'm going to unspool around about 8 inches of that 20 gauge. And I'm using a copper colour because I think it contrasts beautifully with all the gold which you have in the findings and the metalwork in today's beautiful Welcome to the Bayou Jessie James Beads bead box. So what we're looking to do with this is add a little bit of more decorative swirly whirly down at the bottom and a little bit more simple up at the top, and that is to assist us. We only want a single wrap up at the top, so let's just put those components over to one side and we'll pop the earring that we're going to make the partner to just upon the edge. Now the first thing you do when you're working with wire, if you're newer to wire, this is something that you need to definitely remember, is to warm that wire through. So I freed off a good 8 inches of that 20 gauge round wire today. Now it is a beauty to work with. I adore working with wire. You can do so very many different and beautiful things with it. Give that a warm through and it will be your best friend. Now for this design we are going to trim a little bit of wire away at either end, and what we're going to do is start by resting around about 1.25 inches just over the top of that connector at one end, and we're going to pinch very, very firmly, drawing that wire all the way around the back of that one end of the connector, back over the top and then across the back once more. So we've got one single secure little loop going around. If I turn that over onto the back, what we're going to do now is just trim away the excess. Make sure you're only cutting the correct bit of wire there and you're not accidentally snipping anything else. What I'm going to do is very gently and cautiously press that down so that it sits snug and smooth to the connector. The next thing we're going to do is just warm the next couple of inches of that wire, and this is a beautiful technique to get under your fingertips. I'm going to put my thumb over the top of the wire and that connector and just draw the tail all the way around, and this is where warming your wire will really help you. So I've just switched grips there to get that beautiful circular form moving, and I'm pushing down as I move the wire around and then draw that across the surface. So it's a little bit like an eyeball on a weird fish at the moment, but you know, we don't have to keep it like that. I'm going to do another little loop in the opposite direction. So we've come from the underside of the connector just on the left end, all the way around in a loop and continued over the top. We're going to go in the opposite direction now, so it's not really a figure of 8, but if it helps you can think of it as a figure of 8. Let's draw that tail of wire all the way around, loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop. So we've got that second little loop shape going on. It's a little bit larger than the first one, so I'm just going to very, very gently pull that so that it decreases, and then I'm going to press my thumb down on that loop and just twist so that the loop moves over a little bit. Now, because my wire starts on the underside of the connector here on the left, I want to take it to the over the top of the connector on the right hand side, and I'll draw that around underneath, keeping it as close as possible to the body of the connector, and then I'm going to wrap very firmly around 3 times around the second connector loop. We're not going to be using the second connector loop, which is why I can get a little bit more coverage on it. I'm quite happy with how these are sitting and how they look, so I'm going to again very gently squish down on that little bit of wire wrapping like so, and then I'm going to trim away to around about 1.5 inches. That might be a little bit more than we need. Let's grab some round nose pliers in. Perhaps I will take that down to around about 1 inch. There we go, trim the excess away into the scrap pot, grab your round nose pliers and rotate them around to give you that little spiral which we can sit over the top of the second loop, the one that we won't be using. So you can make your spiral as large or as small as you wish. I've used about 1 inch of wire so that it matches the first half of my pair of earrings in size, and then I'm just going to by hand push that little coil so that it sits snugly against the connector, and then I'm going to give it a very, very gentle squish and a squeeze to make sure it sits how I want. So that is the basis of today's design. What I'm going to show you how to do is just assemble these quickly, and all I will have done is taken a jump ring, attach that through both the drop of chain. So let's add that drop of chain, and you could use any of the chains that you have. You don't have to have a crystal on the bottom. You could just use some of this beautiful diamond shaped chain like so. Let's open that so that we can add the top of that connector and the earring finding into position. Once we've got all of those 3 items on the jump ring, always the way, let's just pop that earring finding back on. Power cuts will come at the most inconvenient of times. Let's carry on, shall we? So I'm going to take my earring finding, pop my open jump ring through, then I'm going to add in my length of chain, and then the finding that we just turned into this beautiful swirly whirly dropper, and add that on at the front. Let's hold on very carefully to that section, and then we're going to close up this jump ring by just twisting it back together, making sure that there are no gaps. You have got there your second pair, or your second half rather, to that lovely pair of earrings from the gorgeous bead mix, which is Welcome to the Bayou, July 2023's bead box. So many things you can work with in there. I'm going to show you a very quick modification that you can make. So let's grab some 18 gauge. I'm going to go with gold wire because it contrasts really beautifully with the copper and the wood. Let's just take a moment to just smooth that through. And what we've got here is around about 5 or 6 inches. Again, it's more than we need, but always best to play on the safe side. So I'm going to grab my pliers and just pop a right angle bend on one side, flip that over to the other side, estimate the distance between the bead and the loop that I made on the other piece. You can measure that, and let's just push that away in the opposite direction. So I think that that's around about the same distance. Then we're going to grab our round nose pliers to create a loop all the way around, just your standard wrapped loop like so. And we're turning our bead into a connector now. So let's turn the wire around a couple of times before we flip the design over onto the other side, keeping those two loops in the same orientation so that they will sit flat like so. And let's grab those round nose pliers again, create a second wrapped loop. Ideally they want to be the same size as one another. That's just a little bit smaller than the other one, I think, but you can take your time. And I'm going to turn the wire around the core again a couple of times now. And the reason I do that sort of 2 or 3 times on either side is because now what we're going to do is turn just half a turn at a time. So that's half the way round. Let's flip to the other end, half the way around. I think we can get another half turn on either end, a half turn rather. Bring the other section up, and then we're going to hold that into position whilst we grab those lovely flush cutters, snip away the excess wire, making sure that you're cutting just the correct piece, grabbing in your whichever flat pliers you prefer to use. I like my bent chain nose pliers for almost every task. I'm just going to rotate those around, and then you have yourself a connector. The actual technique for adding that layer of wire over the surface is exactly the same, but you can get yourself a completely different look using that exact same technique. Play around with whether or not you want to add chain on there. Make your own earring findings if you want to, or you can go for this sort of asymmetric design or hang them in the same way. Lots of choices for you to play with.